So which smartphone camera is better, the iPhone 16 Pro or the Google Pixel 9 Pro? It's actually kind of complicated. Let's talk about it. And big thank you to Storyblocks for sponsoring today's video. So it's pretty obvious that the iPhone 16 Pro as well as the Google Pixel 9 Pro are the two best smartphone cameras on the market right now. And in today's video, I want to test these two cameras side by side and apply my 10 years of professional photography experience to these two cameras, so we can define what the differences are between these two cameras and try to identify if there is a clear winner between these two amazing smartphones. Now, these smartphone videos are extremely tedious to make. I spend way more time than I need to staring at these photos and making side-by-side examples to give you all the most accurate information possible. So do me one favor in return for that hard work: hit the thumbs up button and drop a comment with which one of these cameras you think is better based on all the examples in this video. It helps out the channel so much and it makes all the hard work that I spend on these videos worth it for me. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with these two cameras is a comparison of the ultra-wide camera. Now, going into this ultra-wide test, my initial hypothesis was that the iPhone 16 Pro was going to be better than the Google Pixel 9 Pro, and I based that hypothesis just on the fact that based on an eyeball test, I liked the iPhone 16 Pro photos more from the initial video I made with this smartphone versus the ultra-wide photos I made with the Google Pixel 9. Not to say that the Google Pixel 9 made bad photos by any measure, I just felt initially that the iPhone images kind of stuck out a little bit more to me. Now, based on the test I did with these two phones side by side, I pretty much identified why that was. And the main reason was the fact that the iPhone images have much less distortion in the corners and much less warping and bending and funny stuff going on that typically happens with ultra-wide lenses. When you compare these two images and they flip back and forth, you can clearly see how there's a lot of stretching in the corner on the Google Pixel 9 images that is not there with the iPhone images. And if you look at this image right here and you zoom into the top corner, you can see some chromatic abrasion on that pole. It's that slight purple hue on the bottom side of the pole with the Google Pixel 9 images that is not there with the iPhone 16 Pro images. So based on just general ultra wide control, the iPhone images definitely look better than the Pixel 9 Pro images, but that's not the entire story. When you look at the images of the iPhone 16 Pro at ultra wide compared to the Google Pixel 9 Pro at ultra wide, something you realize is the images from the Pixel 9 Pro straight out of camera as a raw file look much better. They're much more contrasty, much more punchy, the colors are much better, and if I was judging these photos simply based on their output from the camera, looking at the raw files on the back of the phone, I would lean towards the Pixel 9. I just felt like these images were much better straight out of camera. Now, one area where the Pixel 9 definitely lost to the iPhone was in overall detail resolution when you zoom in on photos. The Google Pixel 9 is by no means bad, but the iPhone 16 Pro at ultra wide definitely has more resolution when you zoom in on the images. Details are much clearer, as you can see in these examples right here. The flowers are much more readable, they look a lot better, and I even did a test of this when I actually edited the photos just to see if maybe editing the images could impact this somehow, but that stance still remains. Even on edited images, the iPhone 16 Pro images have much more detail when you crop to those extreme levels. Now, I don't really know why anyone would necessarily crop to this point, but from a technical outlook standpoint, the iPhone 16 Pro definitely wins on resolution at ultra wide. But for now, let's move on to the 5x zoom lens and talk about what I saw in my comparison of the two. Now, the 5x zoom lens on the iPhone 16 Pro, I already mentioned in its own review, is the best zoom lens I've ever seen on an iPhone. I was extremely impressed by the zoom on the 16 Pro, and in the initial video I made about the Google Pixel 9 Pro, I said the zoom feature on here was pretty standard to what we've seen on most smartphones. And after this test, I would say that I was a little bit wrong about the Google Pixel 9 telephoto lens. It is stellar, it does produce amazing results, but the result of this comparison is 100% in line with the results of the ultra-wide test. The images from the iPhone are more detailed, they just look a little bit better when you make an extreme crop to them and you want to view detail details on the particular image. The Pixel 9 photos are a little bit softer, they do feel a little bit more natural, and the images are more contrasty and more punchy out of camera. And based on your own perception of what you want from a photograph, if you're someone who leans more towards wanting a great photo right out of camera, you might prefer the Pixel 9 photos. Whereas someone who maybe wants the highest quality result possible and something that can get close to a professional tool, the iPhone feels like it beats out the Google Pixel 9 there. So the results of the telephoto test are the exact same as the ultra-wide test. Now here's where this test gets very interesting and why I said at the beginning of the video, this whole thing is extremely complicated. When I was doing a comparison of the native camera 24mm focal length on both of these cameras, I noticed the difference in the picture profile of the raw files with these two cameras. You see, when you're using smartphone cameras, unlike basically any other camera out there, there is a whole software and computational element to the photos that is applied with the picture profile that is given to the raw file in an editing software. So let's say, for example, you make a raw file on an iPhone. When you bring that photo into Lightroom, there is an Apple Pro RAW setting that is applied to this to make the file readable, because you have this whole processing thing that's happening in the background where the highlights are balanced with the shadow to create this HDR-like image. The same thing happens on the Google Pixel 9 Pro, and you get a Google Pixel picture profile. Now, these two picture profiles are completely different. I mean, night and day difference. With the iPhone, when you take off that picture profile, you get this extremely dark image that is very unappealing. So typically with an iPhone, if you want to edit the photo, you have to use the Apple Pro RAW picture profile, or you have to manually compensate for the fact that your exposure is dropped so heavily. Whereas with the Google Pixel 9, when you're using the Google Pixel picture profile, if you remove that picture profile, everything stays kind of the same. But there's something very interesting that happens with this Google Pixel picture profile, which is the fact that your images are almost hazy like using this picture profile on the computer. You can see it in these two examples right here. Notice in the Pixel image, it almost looks like there's a Pro Mist filter on this camera. It's very hazy, the highlights are really soft, but when you remove this picture profile and use something normal like Adobe Standard, this whole glow haze effect goes away on the Google Pixel images. So that fact right there makes this whole comparison so interesting, because we're not just talking about two images straight out of camera anymore. We're talking about images, sensors, what they can do, and on top of that, this whole computational picture profile element that's applied to the photos in post-processing. With the Pixel 9 Pro, you'll see in these two images right here, with this picture profile applied, the image kind of looks better on the Google Pixel 9. It's a little smoother, it doesn't seem as harsh, it has that natural feel that I raved about in the initial video of the Google Pixel 9, especially compared to the iPhone, which looks really digital and kind of nasty. And when you zoom in on these images, you can see a night and day difference in the two images. Even though they were shot at the exact same time in the exact same lighting conditions, that picture profile plays a huge part in how the photo looks. But when you edit these images, when you edit the Google Pixel 9 photos, you have the ability to emulate your workflow that you would use on a traditional camera. So the workflow that I use to edit a photo from, say, my Leica camera or my Nikon camera applies to images with the Google Pixel 9, making it feel a lot like a professional tool. The images that I shoot with the Google Pixel 9 can be edited just the exact same way I would edit any other photo. Whereas with the iPhone, I have to edit these images in a particular way. I have to pay attention to the picture profile, and I have to use presets that are designed for iPhone images. And when you go through the process to edit two images from these smartphones in the same way, you'll notice that the images look pretty much identical. So in well-lit conditions, I would say that the detail capturing ability of the native camera on the 16 Pro and the Pixel 9 Pro are pretty much neck and neck. They are very similar, but this argument falls apart a little bit when you put the cameras in a low light test. I noticed in my testing that the iPhone 16 Pro looks much better in low light. The images are much more detailed. It handles low light so much better than the Pixel 9 Pro. So with all that being said, it's clear why this is a complicated comparison. These are two very different tools that have the same objective in mind, which is making the best photos possible. Now, I have some final thoughts on which one of these is a winner, but before I get into that, I want to thank today's sponsor, Storyblocks. Now, something we didn't talk about in this video is the fact that the Google Pixel 9 Pro and the iPhone 16 Pro both can create incredible video. And if you're a creator out there only using your smartphone, Storyblocks can help you take your videos to the next level. Storyblocks is an online stock media library with over 1 million assets, including transitions, overlays, and titles for your videos. And one great thing about Storyblocks is the fact that all of their assets are royalty-free and compatible with all major editing platforms like Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, and Final Cut Pro 10. You know, social media video is getting more and more competitive by the day, and most creators are using smartphones for these videos. And one way you can elevate your smartphone video on social media is something as simple as animated titles that look professional found on Storyblocks. Or if you want to have a little bit more of an aesthetic feel to your video, you can utilize the film burn overlays that are found on Storyblocks to give your video a little bit more style and make them more engaging for your audience. Or let's say you film a talking head video with your smartphone and you want some B-roll to make the video more engaging, but you don't want to go out and film it yourself. You can check out the stock media library on Storyblocks and find the exact B-roll clips that you're looking for to take that video to the next level. And what's great about Storyblocks is there's no limit to the amount of assets you can download. It's unlimited when you have an unlimited plan. So use the link in my description down below to take your videos to the next level and elevate your creativity using Storyblocks. So here are my final thoughts. From an editing standpoint, when it comes to editing photos from a smartphone, the Google Pixel 9 Pro is still the best phone I have ever used. This is the closest you will ever come to a smartphone RAW file that replicates the editing workflow of what you would create on any other camera. I have never had RAW files get as close to my style from a smartphone with any other camera. The Pixel 9 Pro is the best. But when it comes to pixel peeping and zooming in on images and checking for details of photos, the image quality of the iPhone 16 Pro definitely beats the 15 Pro, and unfortunately in some situations, not all, but I would say most situations when you're using the ultra-wide, telephoto, or low-light situations, it beats the Google Pixel 9 Pro in terms of image quality. So from a completely objective standpoint, just looking at the facts, you would say that the iPhone 16 Pro is better for photography just because you have that resolution in more situations. So it really depends on where your priorities are. If you're someone who is going to just stare at your photos and you want the sharpest thing possible, yes, the iPhone makes sense. But subjectively speaking, in my opinion, I prefer the images from the Google Pixel 9 Pro. I like that little bit of softness and that more natural look to the images. I love the way they edit, and I just prefer the eyeball test on the photos from this phone as well. They just look a little bit better to me more consistently. But like I've said in the past, what do I know? I'm just a guy who talks about this stuff on the internet and shares my opinion, so feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you've used both of these phones, let me know what you like and dislike about them. If you're someone who is a longtime Android user, let me know your thoughts on the progression of the Google Pixel 9 series. And if you're someone like me who is in the Mac ecosystem, let me know your thoughts on iPhones, and if you're a little bit annoyed at the fact that the innovation is very slow on these smartphones. And also, something that annoys me is the fact that Apple clearly makes it more difficult for people like me who are in the Mac ecosystem to use something like the Google Pixel 9 Pro. It's much more difficult for me to get the files off this phone and just use it in the same way I would as an iPhone. So that could be something that starts a whole other discussion in the comments, and that can be something I talk about in a separate video. For now, I'm going to get out of here. If you enjoyed the video, like I said, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you are not yet, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.